expected it to go well. Again, official visits don't go poorly, but the biggest name on campus this weekend that was not a commit, there were a lot of commits there, very much pushing the family atmosphere. The uncommitted biggest target was Aaron Scott, defensive back from Ohio. If you're not familiar with him yet, then I don't think you've been following recruiting at all. So let's dive in. Kid from Ohio, obviously. He's got his visit coming up with Ohio State on the 23rd. But how did the official visit go? Where do you think Michigan is? And tell me right now if he commits to Michigan. Go.
Oh, I think Michigan's right there coming out of the visit. I do. I really do. I think they've always been right there. I've kind of always felt more confident that they were going to get Aaron Scott compared to Bryce West. But, it's hard not to like where Michigan's sitting right now. And you mentioned it, that Ohio State visit's going to be pretty big. And, whether that, is enough to put Ohio State over the finish line, I don't know. But, I think this is as neck and neck as you can get. I mean, they've had a couple of those, and one of them is going to bounce their way eventually. But, the commits felt really good. They kind of categorized it as, it's giving it their best shot, gave them everything they got, so, and on like a staff side of things, they feel good. And now, like everyone else is just kind of sweating out that Ohio State visit to see how that goes. So, at this point, it could go either way. I'm not really confident, in which direction he's going to pick, to be honest with you. I do think Michigan is right there. Oregon is going to be a factor, but I do think it's going to be an Ohio State Michigan battle. So, it's hard to, I can't put any official stamp of approval for one school over the other. If I were forced to pick today, I would pick Michigan, but that's just, out of necessity to pick a school. That's not, based on sourced information or anything.
I don't think he knows yet either.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Right. I've continued to frame this as maybe it's a hedge, but I don't think it is. I think Michigan being in this recruitment at this point, I muted myself there. At this point in the recruitment, Michigan even being involved, I think is a big win. And they're seriously involved. We've had some guys that come around but end up at Ohio State and never really felt like they were seriously considering Michigan. Aaron Scott's seriously considering Michigan. I kind of framed this. Somebody asked me to do it as a real game analogy. What's the score as of today? How would you frame it if this was a game? And I said, I think it's Michigan just took a score lead late, but Ohio State's going to have the ball last, right? I think Michigan's done better. It scored more than they expected, but now they kind of need to hope Ohio State fumbles it, right? Yeah. I mean, there's just as good a chance that Ohio State seals the deal with the visit this weekend as he goes there and thinks, you know what, my heart is still at Michigan. And I think Michigan's strategy is paying off here. They weren't putting a big push on him this week. We'll talk about Bryce West. I think those are two guys that needed to be recruited differently. I think they just made Aaron feel like he's already a part of the family atmosphere that exists there. And like you said, they feel comfortable that they've done everything they can. But at the end of the day, we'll see, right? Coming out of this OSU visit, neither one of us are ready to make a prediction, but I think Michigan's done the best they can. And that's a win in itself, as lame as that sounds. But again, this is what's been happening on the field, bleeding into recruiting now. Mm-hmm. Same thing with, I know you've said from the beginning, Michigan probably has a better chance with Scott. Bryce West obviously plays over at Glenville for Ted Ginn Sr. in Cleveland. He will be with Scott on that visit on the 23rd. We have not confirmed yet, I don't believe, right? Unless something's changed in the last few minutes, but some rumors West was looking at potentially coming back to Michigan for an unofficial this week before his big official with Ohio State this weekend. The one thing we do know is he canceled his USC visit, and this is Michigan versus Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think it was pretty evident, from just looking at it through the entire scope. I don't think you really needed to confirm that USC was out of it to really think that it was going to be a Michigan-Ohio State battle. But I've asked a few people, I've asked around, and I really haven't gotten anything on West taking an unofficial to Michigan midweek just yet. That involves asking some commits who don't. I had one commit say he doesn't think he's going to go, and then talking to people around the program as well that they aren't really aware of his plans yet. So it could happen any day. The decision could come down at any minute. So this is something that we're going to keep asking about as the week goes on. But as we stand here right now on a Monday, we don't have anything yet. So we'll see. I mean, if he does make the trip, obviously that's gives them something to really, gives everyone something to think about. It's a great opportunity for West to kind of get his mind on Michigan before heading into the Ohio State visit, because I know a decision for him is coming in July, so he's not too far away from a decision. So, obviously we've heard so much about what this Ohio State visit could potentially do for both West and Scott, but I do think it's important as well that he's making this trip, and it kind of legitimizes the fact that this is a two-team neck-and-neck race between Michigan and Ohio State, and who knows who's got the lean right now. It could very well be Michigan's got the lean because he was the last school to visit, and then Ohio State takes it right back once he makes the trip. But both programs are prioritizing him. He's made some really strong relationships on both sides of the fence, and we'll see what the temperature's like coming out of the weekend visit. I think this is going to be really telling. And then that's not to say that he's not going to make another trip to either Columbus or Ann Arbor again when all is said and done after this weekend. But, I think this kind of where things stand right now, and this goes the same way for Aaron Scott as well. I think we'll know a lot more about where this thing is headed or how this is trending coming out of the weekend visit. I don't think it necessarily, he's been there enough times that, you won't get the sense that, oh, this is a, after visit, afterglow that, he loves his visit or whatever. I mean, I think he's been there enough times to kind of get a sense of everything. And if so again, after this weekend, we'll have a much clearer view about where this is headed.
To me, it's like the response to the final sales pitch, right? That was very much what I heard with a lot of the stuff with Aaron Scott, right? This is where him and Klink really sat down and talked about, like, this is how I want to use you. This is how you're going to fit. Like, really got into some of the scheme stuff, right? Both of those guys, Scott and West, talking about man defense. I mean, aside from Michigan's success on the field, these guys are being recruited, or Michigan's in it because of Steve Clinkscale. I think I've said that before. I'll continue to say it. Klink from Ohio and just what he's been able to do. And the guys responding to that. Michigan has an advantage there that they didn't used to have when it came to defensive back recruiting against Ohio State. What has happened the last 2 years, Klink with his development, and then just him as a recruiter. So that's going to be where I think Michigan's strategy may have paid off here, because you've got Scott, West, and then Justin Scott, the other 5-star recruit who was at Michigan with West, just was at Miami this past weekend. Going to be interesting to see. That's kind of been up and down, him in Miami. But all three of those guys are going to be at Ohio State at the same time. And I think when Ohio State scheduled this initially, they're like, hey, we're going to hit a home run with all these dudes. And now I wonder if they have too much work to do with each of them. They're not going to be able to do a blanket pitch. Are they going to have to figure out how they're going to target each one? They might have too much work to do is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And that could hurt them in some areas. It's really interesting. And that's what I agree with you coming out of this weekend. If we feel like Ohio State went to another level in terms of, because it's going to go well, of course it's going to go well, but if they went to another level based on some of the things we hear, then I think that's going to be a big tell.
Yeah. But I do think it's interesting too, that Michigan hasn't had both Aaron Scott and Bryce West on campus at the same time too. I do think that's
interesting and intentional, probably.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure it is. I mean, I think you'd rather have one come on one weekend and the other come on the other, because you don't want to, like, as you said, I think you nailed it. You don't want to stretch yourself thin in terms of making sure these guys get the attention that you're trying to give them. And so, you've got Bryce West there, pretty much the only cornerback prospect there outside of Jacob Oden, but he's, a commit. So that's a totally different situation. But, you've got Bryce West there last weekend, and you're able to give him the one-on-one time. Now you've got Aaron Scott here this weekend, and you've given him the one-on-one time. So yeah, I think, I mean, it's a viable question. Is Ohio State spreading themselves too thin by hosting both of these guys on the same weekend? I mean, they'll probably pitch the thing like, hey, you two can play together and be the next great duo, but do they want to play together?
I
mean,
and
I don't
think there's not a grudge there.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think they're friendly, but these are two guys that have never talked about syncing up like it was a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people have tried to compare it to Will and Domani. I think that was different. I think Domani knew he was going to USC and Will knew he was going to Michigan, and they were both trying to
Domani was ever coming to Michigan.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think Domani was saying that because he was hoping he was going to get Will to come his way.
Yeah.
But Domani was never coming to Michigan. I'm 100%. That's where I was going with that. So I think this is different. I don't think they'd be against playing together at Ohio State or Michigan, but I think that part of the pitch doesn't need to be front and center like it's going to be this weekend with Ohio State. And I think again, if it doesn't pay off, then everything I'm saying doesn't matter. But I think I like what Michigan's done. Yeah. Which is if they do decide to play together in Ann Arbor, it has never been about getting both Ohio kids. They have never treated them that way. Obviously, it'd be an amazing duo to have, but they're treating it like it's a coincidence that they're both from Ohio, that we're not trying to pitch this as a syncing up duo, right? We want you both individually because of who you are individually, how you play individually. And if you both come, that's awesome. But we're not trying to pretend that, like, you know what I mean? I think that's interesting. We'll see how it plays out again, but big weekend for Ohio State and Michigan. No way around it.